What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back and welcome into some Seattle Mariners talk. And obviously, there has been not a lot to talk about in terms of activity for the baseball team. So I do apologize about not having some videos up. There's obviously been some players the Mariners have been interested in that they haven't gotten. We'll talk about some of those in the video. But it's been a quiet offseason for the team. There just hasn't been much to talk about unless we want to talk about the inactivity, which is certainly a big topic of discussion amongst Mariners fans for sure. So before I dive any further, as always, do me a favor, like the video. It helps out a lot for the algorithm, gets it out to more people. Hit subscribe if you're new. If you are new to my channel, I do these off-season videos. I'll break down any signing, I promise. For, if the Mariners do a trade or something that is of significance to the Major League roster, I promise I will break it down. And then you will get post-game recaps for all 162 Mariners games. So, just kind of a fun way. I think sometimes I can vent things that fans are thinking. So it's a nice listen for you guys and also maybe make some points you weren't thinking of. I don't pretend to be an expert on all this. I'm just a Mariners fan like all of you that wants to see the team win and succeed. And, certainly not the best sports team ever to have that, but we'll dive into some of the stuff here. So again, the inactivity really does continue for the Mariners. Now, there's been some rumors of them in on certain players. Hae-Sung Kim was rumored to actually, I think by a Korean Twitter account. I'm not sure how legitimate they were. I didn't follow it, but were rumored to be the favorite. The Mariners were rumored to be the favorites for Kim. Kim ends up going to the Dodgers, and the Mariners miss out. Now, I was in favor of it. Listen, I'm in favor of any player right now that I think can make this baseball team a little bit better. And I think Hae-Sung Kim is someone that could have done that for the team. Now, I think everyone agrees the offense is potentially limited with a player like that, but a plus defender, good base runner, and second base right now, a little bit of a hole for the Mariners. I don't think Dylan Moore is by any means a bad baseball player, but probably not someone you want as an everyday player. And truthfully, right now, I think he's starting at third base. So you're probably right now looking at Bliss being the opening day second baseman, unless they think Cole Young is ready. We'll have to see what happens during spring training for that. So just from that standpoint alone, I think Kim would have helped. And listen, I think I'm going to read a tweet from Ryan Divish that I think sums it up perfectly and really captured my thoughts on the whole situation with Kim. And this will apply to a lot of different players that the team has missed out on this offseason. And this was from January 3rd, but Divish said losing out on Hae-Sung Kim isn't the end of the world for the Mariners. His defense and speed made him interesting, and his offensive production would certainly regress against MLB pitching. But when you haven't made any other move to address obvious needs, it's understandable for fans to feel that way. The Mariners can still make moves to add to the roster, but there's definitely less options. I think Divish sums it up perfectly. Sums up a lot of the players the Mariners haven't been on this offseason or have lost out on. I kind of feel the same way about Carlos Santana. I like Carlos Santana. I was hoping he'd be a Seattle Mariner. I don't think it's the end of the world that he isn't, but again, the team hasn't addressed the needs that they have. So when you continue to have that, you can't be surprised when fans are giving backlash and are frustrated. I think most fans would agree that Hae-Sung Kim is not a world beater, someone that's necessarily going to be an all-star, superstar player. But my standpoint on this has been for this baseball team is I think they're probably, and I haven't looked at the projections too much yet. So this is just going off of, looking at the roster right now. I think this is an 85 win baseball team, 84 to 87 in that range. That's why this stuff is so frustrating to me with inactivity, because when I see a team that's projected to be 84, 85 wins in a division that I think will be winnable, it's frustrating when they don't make moves. I don't think a lot of fans have expected the Juan Sotos. Maybe some fans, kind of like myself, delusionally thought maybe some of their lack of spending was saving for a Shohei Ohtani or something like that. That was pretty clearly not the case. And they haven't even really had some of the creative trades we've at least seen from Jerry. Now, some of them certainly have not worked out, but we haven't even seen Trader Jerry pull off something yet this offseason as well. So fans are rightfully very frustrated. And like I said, I don't think that they're necessarily up in arms that Kim isn't a Mariner or Carlos Santana isn't a Mariner, But when you take the whole picture into consideration, it's become very frustrating. It's a frustrating offense. And as of right now, listen, there is offseason left. I'll talk about a couple more possible moves. So, I'm someone that never says never. Maybe there is some trade that we're not even thinking of that Jerry pulls off, and, they can then fill in with a smaller free agent and stuff like that. So, there is still time. But as it stands right now, and that's all we have to go off of, this team kind of feels like it's in the same boat it's always been in. I think it's got, and I'm on repeat. If you guys have been subscribers for a while, I say this all the time. I think this team has a solid core of players. I think it's one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. I think a bullpen that should be healthier. Jackson Kowar, Matt Brash, and hopefully Gregory Santos as well can create a very dangerous back end of the bullpen for opponents. And I think it's an offense that has some upside if Julio can find consistency from April through September. You know what you're going to get from Cal Raleigh, Luke Raley. If you can get Victor Robles to do what he did last year, maybe not to that extent, but a close version of that, a full season of Randy Arozarena in the outfield, I think this is a pretty solid baseball team, but it needs more. It needs more. And right now, and I'm finally getting to the point, we're in the same boat we've been in the last 3 years. It's a decent baseball team that's going to have to catch some breaks to get in the playoffs or to make a run. It's not a bad team. Now, when you have a pitching staff as good as the Mariners, you are not going to be, unless there's injuries, 500 is probably the bare minimum floor, again, assuming no injuries. But that shouldn't be the goal anymore. 2019, fine. Like, that team was going through a rebuild, realized that they didn't have the core pieces to compete with a team like the Astros. Let them win the division for 2-3 seasons, retool your farm system, and then make a run for it. I don't expect teams that are 59, 60 win teams to be all in on certain players. In fact, if this team was projected that way, I would honestly say, wait, let Haniger's contract come off the books. Let Garver's contract come off the books. Let Castillo's contract. I like Luis Castillo, but that contract will free up money. You've got an amazing farm system. Let it develop. And then when it's ready to contribute, then you go in and spend. But that's not where this team is right now. The farm system's great, but truthfully, for me, where the Mariners are at, you should be using that farm system to go out and get guys. Now, again, right, it takes two to tango. I've talked about how I don't think Jerry's wrong when he says that teams just aren't dealing for prospects much anymore. There's too many playoff spots now. It's very rare that you have teams that just aren't competing. Truthfully, the only team we know for sure, too, are probably the Marlins and the White Sox that have no intention of competing. And I'm not sure what the Marlins really have that you'd be interested in. Even the White Sox, you'd have to find a way to get a three-team trade kind of thing going. Rest of the teams are wanting some major league ready players. And I think that's kind of the conundrum they ran into with Castillo. I think they did want to trade him. I think that was what they viewed as could free up $20 million and we could get a major league piece back. But I think they ran into the roadblock of either not getting enough for a major league piece or something that wouldn't shed the contract. Perfect example, apparently the Red Sox counteroffer for Castillo for Casas was Yoshida and Casas for Castillo. Now, you look at that initially and you say, oh, it's a great trade, right? More players for one. But you're essentially then taking on Yoshida's contract, which is much worse than Castillo's contract. I think you do get a little bit of savings in that deal if you were to do it, but not enough to make a difference, an extra maybe $2 million. You get Casas, who I like, and I said I probably would have done Castillo for Casas straight up, especially when you factor in the savings, Casas being under club control. But you throw Yoshida in there, you don't get that savings from the Castillo deal, and that's one of the benefits from the Mariners standpoint of trading Castillo is to free up that money. I personally don't mind Castillo still being on this team. I think he's still a tremendous pitcher. I wish the Mariners had other avenues. But unfortunately, with the ownership group, that's kind of where they're at. So you either get that. You either get an underwhelming deal. They probably could have traded Castillo for some prospects, but the Mariners want major league talent back. And when they do get, when I say substantial from the Red Sox, I just mean in multiple players, it's taking on a bad contract. Castillo's contract is good. It's expensive for a team with this payroll. It's not a bad contract. Yoshida's is a bad contract. So now you have a bad contract on the books. You do have Casas, but now you have no way to backfill the rotation. And I don't love having multiple D8. You've already have Haniger and Garver. I'm not sure Yoshida would have helped at all. So I'm fine with them not doing that deal and all that. But my point is, I think the Mariners did kind of want to have their cake and eat it too with trying to trade Castillo, where they wanted cheap, controllable major league talent. Well, you can get minor league talent, prospects for that. But in today's day and age, with extra wild card, more teams competing, I just don't think you're going to get what they wanted in the Castillo deal. So at this point, I'd be very surprised if Luis Castillo is moved. So anyways, after the Mariners lost out on Kim, the attention kind of turned to Gavin Lux, who was the Dodgers, I think at the time, current second baseman. So it seemed like that would be a fit. Sound like there were actually rumors the Mariners were interested. Well, he ends up going to Cincinnati for like a competitive balance A pick or whatever that is, and then another prospect as well. Certainly a deal I think the Mariners could have matched. Now, as always with prospects and teams trading, we don't know how other teams evaluate that talent. So, maybe there was something the Mariners did offer and the Dodgers preferred the Reds offer. And again, Gavin Lux kind of falls into that. Is he amazing? No. 2021, 90 WRC plus, 2022, 113 WRC plus, and in 2024, a 100 WRC plus. Pretty average offensive player and a pretty average defender. But he's been worth, in fact, what did he have in terms of wins above replacement level? I meant to write that down and I didn't see it, but let's pull up Gavin Lux. They're still young too, I believe. Gavin Lux is how old? He's 27. Left-handed bat too, which helps in T-Mobile. 2022 when he had the 113 WRC plus, he was worth 2.7 wins above replacement level. Last year with the 100 WRC plus, he was worth 1.5. But listen, like, what did the Mariners miss the playoffs by in 2024? One or two, right? I think one and a tiebreaker. Well, Lux is essentially, I think Jorge Polanco was worth 0.8 wins above replacement level. That's essentially another win. Now, again, we don't know what Lux would have done, but that might be another win. And that one win might be enough. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make with this team is it doesn't have to be, all the Juan Sotos of the world. I would love to be able to do that. But, sometimes a Gavin Lux, a Ha-Seong Kim can be the difference. And you're looking for that added value over what you got at second base last year. So again, I think Gavin Lux also falls into what Ryan Divish talked about in that tweet. Do I think you should lose sleep over not getting Gavin Lux? No. But again, it's just another name the Mariners rumored in and another name that's going somewhere else. Not quite sure what the Reds are doing. Maybe Spencer Steer's available, but even then, Steer kind of falls into that same category as well. John Morosi did tweet out today. MLB Network posted that Nolan Arenado has reportedly been more open-minded to waiving his no-trade clause to more teams in the last 24 hours. That's per John Morosi. Morosi then followed it up with a quote tweet saying, "The Mariners and Tigers are options for Nolan Arenado if the Red Sox and Cardinals aren't able to reach an agreement." Always be careful about those things because that can just be, and Morosi kind of missed on some Mariners stuff last year. I don't know how he's been doing this offseason. I haven't kept up as much. Always be careful of that stuff because it might just be Morosi's thoughts. Oh, the Mariners need a third baseman. They make sense. So the Mariners could be an option. We have no idea if the Mariners have reached out to Nolan Arenado's camp, not to his camp, to the Cardinals, it'd have to be a trade. You'd have to do something with contract swaps for Arenado's contract because I highly doubt the Mariners could just take it on. I'd be all for it. Nolan Arenado's still been a productive player. He was worth 2.7 wins above replacement level in 23 and 3.1 in 24. Still a very solid defensive third baseman and still solid with the bat. 106 WRC plus 2 years ago, 102 last year. Not the MVP player he used to be, but a good veteran presence. And still a productive player that would help the Seattle Mariners. So again, find a way to get it done and I'd be for it. I just think there'd be way too much moving parts. I just don't see it just with the contract. And I don't know, again, maybe you throw a prospect to the Cardinals and then maybe they take on Mitch Garver or something, or I guess Mitch Haniger. I just think Garver has more value. I don't know the Cardinals roster all that well. So maybe you can do something like that and that does free up enough, but I wouldn't hold my breath on that. I think that's just Morosi speculating a little bit on a name that could be out there. and a team that could use a third baseman. So, but I'd be fine with it. I'm also going to look through what free agents are left. And then we'll talk about maybe one more trade option. But listen, the cupboard's bare. We are getting to a point here with this team. And again, when I say what I'm about to say, I want you all to know this is not my preference in terms of what I would have wanted the team to do this offseason. Are we getting to a point, though, where Dylan Moore might be your best option at second base? I mean, you look at some of the names, and again, unless a trade gets worked out, it's not a pretty sight. Luke Raley might be your best option for first base. In fact, outside of maybe signing Justin Turner, platooning him a little bit with Raley, then Raley playing a little outfield and Turner playing some first when Raley's out there, and kind of not a straight platoon maybe, but, in that vein. I don't know what else, unless there's a trade I'm missing, unless something you work out for Casas, which I don't see happening. I don't see much out there that I'd really not just roll with Luke Raley and see what Tyler Locklear can do in spring training. I've also said the same thing about Cole Young. Maybe we just are getting to a point where if Cole Young has a big spring, maybe he does break camp with the team. And I'm not great with when prospects are ready and when they're not. So you guys can fire away in the comments if he's not ready, but that may be an option. I think people are going to expect a little too much from Cole Young. I'd expect someone to put up like a 104, 105 WRC plus, kind of just solid defense. Now, but here's the thing. If you do that, that's kind of what the Mariners have been missing. And maybe that's just what they roll with. Maybe they think Cole Young is ready. Jerry did hint at that. That could have just been GM speak and, propping up a prospect, but it is possible. But it is kind of sad that I am kind of getting there where I don't know if some of the free agents are even better than what you're going to get outside of maybe just adding some depth, which isn't a bad thing. But let's look at the list here. I won't be able to pull it up, but I'll read it off to you. Starting with second baseman, guys, it's not pretty. Brandon Drury, who was dreadful last season. Hassan Kim, but he's going to be out until June. If he wasn't, I think that would be a nice fit. But with him being out till June, you figure that might be Cole Young time. I don't know. We'll see. Could still be an option, but I don't love guys that are already coming into the season with injuries. And then do we know for sure he's going to be back in June? I'm tilting my head so the Griffey. I should switch these so in football season the Easley is more visible, baseball the Griffey's more visible. But do we know for sure he's going to be back in June? I mean, how many times do we hear that with players that, Matt Brash was just going to miss a few weeks and all these things. And those guys end up being out for longer. So certainly the best player available, but not sure. I mean, Jorge Polanco is out there. I certainly was fine with them declining the option because at this point, I think you could get him for a lot cheaper. I mean, it's not the worst option if he wasn't healthy last year. And I think it was the knee was really bothering him, maybe a bounce back candidate. But I don't like, I'm all for changes of scenery, but I think sometimes guys just got to go. And then, I wouldn't be shocked if Polanco actually has a little bit of a bounce back. I just don't see it really in Seattle or that happening. Adam Frazier, who was pretty bad last year. I mean, there's ways where he could make some sense on the roster. Again, I want to be clear. I have no intentions of coming into this offseason celebrating that, but it could be an option. John Birdie is interesting. Let's pull up some of his numbers here. I'm just going to go to Fangraphs real quick. Birdie was non-tendered by the Yankees. Has spent most of his time with the Marlins in his career. Let me see if I can pull this up. There he is. He's been a fairly productive player at times. In 22, while the offense wasn't there, a good defensive player and a great base runner that was able to add 2.2 wins above replacement level. In 23, his last full season in the bigs. Now, he is 33 years old. Let me be clear on that. 35. 23, he was 33. Did have a decent offensive season. 101 WRC plus. Decent defender again, was worth 2.1 wins. And then he has had seasons in 2019 and 2020 of plus 100 WRC plus offense, along with some good defense and base running. So Birdie might be someone to keep an eye on as a stopgap until you think Cole Young is ready. But again, is Birdie better than Dylan Moore? But again, Dylan Moore's over at third now, so I don't know. It may be someone to keep an eye on. At 35-year-old, just keep an eye on it. Again, guys, I'm not coming on here to sell you too hard on a John Birdie, but might be a name to watch. Again, these are just free agents. You got Nick Madrigal, Donovan Solano might be interesting, but he's 38. And then Swaggerty, Sam Haggerty. Let's look at shortstop because, those guys could play some second and third possibly. You do have Enrique Hernandez, Kike Hernandez. I think he'll probably end up back with the Dodgers. Jose Iglesias is kind of interesting. Let's pull up his numbers. Certainly a glove first. He has been around forever. I feel like I remember him playing in 2013, 2014. Iglesias is 35. I remember he was playing with Detroit in 2015, 16. Last year with the Mets, 291 plate appearances. Did have a 137 WRC plus. I certainly wouldn't expect that to continue because previously in Colorado in 22 with in 467 plate appearances, 87 WRC plus in 2021. It was 89. Did have a big one in 2020, but that's the COVID season. 82. It's a lot of 80s, but certainly an outstanding defensive player, base runner, not much there, but a great glove. If you had a lefty at second base, like if Dylan Moore was a left-handed player, I think Iglesias might be an okay platoon partner for Dylan Moore, and help you out with the glove. But I don't know. Like Iglesias to me is a guy you sign. Let's say you want to roll with Cole Young, and Cole Young's having an atrocious spring training and he's just not ready. You go sign a Jose Iglesias. It's someone to keep an eye on. That's all I'm doing here. I'm just going over names that, again, of the free agency. Nick Ahmed, Tim Anderson, Brandon Crawford, I think retired. So nothing really there. Third base, I think it's going to be Yohan Moncada and not much. I'll still have Alex Bregman there. I highly doubt he ends up in Seattle unless some money is somehow saved very, very quickly. Moncada's, let's look at Moncada a bit in Fangraphs. I haven't pulled up his numbers yet. Let's pull up Yohan Moncada, former top prospect of the White Sox, but I think he's approaching 30 years old now too. He's 29, and so he'll be 30 in May. So he will be 30 this season. He said former top prospect, has had some decent seasons, right? In 2021, 120 WRC plus, was slightly above average on defense, 3.7 wins above replacement level, but dropped off big time in 2022, was terrible offensively, still good on defense, so added some value, but a 76 WRC plus. 23 was his last full season, or close to it, with 357 at-bats. About league average hitter, 98 WRC plus, was worth 1.1 wins above replacement level. Did have a nice season last year, but in 45 plate appearances, he did have a 117 WRC plus, but that's in 45 at-bats, so that doesn't tell us much. I mean, listen, when it comes to Moncada, former top prospect, I will certainly be willing to listen to a change of scenery for any White Sox player. That organization is just dreadful. So, but it'd be one thing if he was like 25 and needed a change of scenery. But I mean, he's been good in Chicago before. And even then, like, it's not like he had 5 really great seasons. He was really good in 2019. Other than that, he's just kind of been okay. Do I think it would be the worst thing ever? Probably not for third base, and it allows Dylan Moore to go back and sort of his super utility role, allows him to play second. Maybe you sign someone to platoon with Dylan Moore until Cole Young is ready. So it does allow you some options, and it should be pretty cheap. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that I'd be in love with it, but it is somebody that, maybe getting out of Chicago a little bit does help. I think he's a switch hitter, or is Moncada left, or is he switch? Oh, he bats righty. And why do I remember Moncada batting left-handed? Who am I thinking of? I swear Moncada batted left-handed, so that's going to make it even tough. I swear, did he? I swear on everything, Moncada was a left-handed hitter. I would have bet on it. That doesn't make it easier in T-Mobile, but I swear he bats lefty. I got to look this up now. This is, again, riveting stuff. I'm sorry, and you guys could be laughing at me. I swear Johan Moncada was yeah, he is. Yeah, he's batted lefty. Was he switch? Yeah, he's batting lefty in all these pictures I'm looking at. So again, lefties tend to hit better in T-Mobile. So I think Fangraphs just has that wrong. That was surprised when I saw it. But again, doesn't change the fact that I would be tepid about it. But again, as we get down to the nitty gritty, unless Jerry's pulling off a trade, this is what's left in the free agent market. I do want to talk about a name that's become a little polarizing, it seems, recently, and that's Luis Arraez. So that's a name that's come up a ton, kind of on Twitter X. It seems like fans either love him or hate him. It's either overrated or underrated. He's a very polarizing player. And I think the overrated with Luis Arraez comes from the fact that the national media, when he was leading the league in hits and batting average, sort of put him in the Aaron Judge or Luis Arraez. What hitter would you rather have? And it's like, okay, that's ridiculous. Arraez is not a top 5 hitter in baseball. He's got really good contact skills, puts the ball in play. And the BABIP gods, when you put the ball in play, can sometimes smile on you. So I think there was just that sort of started the Luis Arraez is overrated because the national media talked about him as this just amazing, amazing player. He's fine, right? Luis Arraez is not a top 5 hitter in baseball, but he's also kind of gets then dragged because of the overrated that I think it's kind of made him a little underrated a little bit. Steamer projects him to have a 118 WRC plus this season. He was 109 last year, 130 in 2023, 130 in 2022. Is that being carried by high BABIPs? Yes. But Luis Arraez, his game is based on that. Ichiro had a lot of high BABIP. Not comparing Arraez to Ichiro. Ichiro was a plus defender. Arraez is not a plus defender. So there's major differences in their games for sure. But in terms of like their skill is putting the ball in play and making contact. And also, Arraez does not strike out a lot. I'm going to pull up his Savant, at least for me here. Again, I'm sorry, I can't share it once I start the video, so I do apologize about that. But let's pull up Luis Arraez here. Yeah, I mean, there's some things he does not do well. He's in the lowest percentile for barreling the ball up and hard hit and bat speed. He's actually bad at chasing, but he does not whiff or strike out. He's in the 100th percentile for striking out in the good way. He does not strike out or swing and miss. He does chase a lot, but he's making contact and falling the ball off. He does not walk. And he is not a good defender. So he'd probably be playing a lot of first base. He'd probably be your first baseman. I guess he could stand at second in a pinch. Now, that does create a bit of a roster shuffle because of all the needs. First base might actually be the lowest right now because I think you can roll with Luke Raley. I'm probably not putting Arraez at second. And if you want him to DH, that's fine. He's going to be probably better than Haniger or Garver. But again, you kind of run into my frustration with like Yoshida when he was mentioned. I think Arraez is a better player than Yoshida, but then you just have a lot of DHs. I'll be clear, Arraez would have to be traded for. He has a fairly substantial contract. I think he's due $13.5 million. That throws again a wrench into it. I think the Mariners could get him. I just money-wise, I don't know what you would do. And I would not trade Luis Castillo for Luis Arraez either. So you'd have to send some prospects and then somehow you'd have to get, boy, it'd be great to get Mitch Haniger's contract off the books. That would really be the bee's knees to make something like that happen. So Arraez is just a super interesting player, very unique. And I will say this, like I've talked about on Twitter a little bit, I like the idea of Arraez hitting behind Julio and Victor Robles. Those guys get on base with their speed, and then you've got Arraez putting the ball in play a ton, and I think you can really have some fun chaos ball there. So I get the overratedness with Arraez, and there may not be a spot, but I know some Mariner fans have just kind of dismissed it altogether and been like, oh no, Luis Arraez is overrated. He's a better player than I think people give him credit for. He's just not a top 10 hitter in baseball, but he's a very solid player. And if you could get him, I really like that idea with him hitting behind Julio and Robles. Listen, we've talked about the Mariners wanting to cut back on strikeouts. Luis Arraez is a player that does that. He brings in the contact game. Like I said, I think hitting behind Julio and Robles when they're on would really help this lineup tremendously. So I don't think it'll happen because of the contract, but a name to maybe keep an eye on if something something frees up. Listen, it comes down to ownership in the front office, right? I do tend to put more of this on ownership. And you guys know, if you follow my channel, I said I think Jerry and Justin should have been let go after last season. It's just been this team has not taken the step forward. But I also don't know what a new GM or new VP would have done at the same time. Like, I'm not sure with the $15 million budget what they could have done. And I know, like, well, Mitch Haniger's contract. Well, you don't make that trade, you have Robbie Ray's contract. Now, they signed Robbie Ray, so they're not off the hook for that. But that would be 2 more years. Now, Ray might be a more productive player for you than Haniger, but you'd still be in the same boat because you'd have that contract on the books. Mitch Garver's hurts his money. You'd like to get rid of it, but you also kind of need Mitch Garver right now. He's your backup catcher and did hit lefties very well last season. So, like, you could probably trade Mitch Garver. I think someone would maybe eat 7-8 million of that and take him, and kind of make him their backup catcher / platoon DH, which I think is the role he has on the Mariners right now. But then you lose out on someone I think can help the Mariners next year. I actually think I wouldn't be shocked if Mitch Garver bounces back a bit in 2025. But you also shouldn't rely on Mitch Garver either. Like, if he is still really bad next year, that wouldn't be shocking in the slightest as well. So you can't bank on it, but you kind of need Mitch Garver. You don't need Mitch Haniger. If the Mariners could release him and eat $9 million of that contract, they would. But unfortunately, they're kind of stuck. And I love Mitch Haniger. I'm not trying to be like it's a human being. I'm not trying to say just throw him to the wolves. But man, that contract is killing. Like I said, there's not much you can do because you'd be dealing with the Robbie Ray contract anyways. So it really doesn't like change where they would have been at in this offseason. I listen, I've said it before. There's GMs that have done less with what Jerry has, and they've done better. Jerry and Justin are to blame. But the $15 million budget from Stanton, I just don't know what you can do. You know, Divish talked about his podcast that they thought they kind of had Carlos Santana locked up. They felt confident. Then Cleveland came in right as the Naylor trade was going down, and he wanted to stay in Cleveland. That probably would have been a move they made, and then maybe a Hae-Sung Kim or something at second, or, you know, who knows? And that would have been the offseason. And, you know, I don't know. But when you're dealing with that, like you can't get in on the Josh Naylor trade. That would have been your whole offseason. That would have been it. And I like Josh Naylor, but he's not enough better than Luke Raley, where I think you spend everything on him. But on the flip side, what are you going to spend it on? I'd also rather have Josh Naylor than Jose Iglesias and Yohan Moncada. So, you know, it's that massive, I want to say double-edged sword, because it's John, Jerry, Justin, the Triple J's job to make this team better and put a better team out there. So, and they haven't done it so far. There's offseason left. You know, did some of the names I mentioned, could they help? Yeah, I think every single one of those guys could, but no matter who they sign, you know, I think Arenado would be a little different if you could acquire him. And you know, I think a couple other players maybe, but the one thing pretty much everybody I went through, and Arraez, I think, is a little bit better than your just everyday free agent. But when we went through that list of free agents, you're in the same boat you're in the last couple off seasons. It's the AJ Pollock moves. Could Jose Iglesias help? Absolutely. Maybe Yohan Moncada does bounce back and has a nice little season, but you're banking on a player bouncing back and being maybe what they're not, or an older player not dropping off completely. You're in the same boat you've been in the last few off seasons. You're needing these sort of, I don't want to call them mediocre, but more mid-level players having to not decline at all or bounce back or something to that level for this team to get in. And do I think they can make the playoffs? I still do, actually, but they're going to need things to go right. They are, like, right now, what the Mariners would need. They would need that bullpen to not only be healthy, but lights out. Like, they need Munoz, Santos, and Brash. You know, Munoz can pitch like he did last year, but you need 2023 Santos and you need 2023 Matt Brash. No other way around it. You have to have that in the bullpen. You need all 5 stars to stay healthy, which we already know Brian Wu has had issues with that. And the odds of another whole season. Now, Castillo did miss a little bit of time at the end of the year, but the odds of Castillo, Gilbert, Kirby, and Miller all not seeing the IL again are frankly not high. Someone will probably miss some time somewhere. You need a Mitch Garver bounce back. You need him closer to what he was in Texas. You need more consistency from Julio. He cannot go into the All-Star break with a WRC plus in the 80s or 70s or whatever it was. He doesn't have to be 150, but it's got to be like 110, 115 or something like that. It's got to be more sustainable. If Luke Raley does what he did last year, Victor Robles does what he did last year, a full season of Randy playing like the guy he's been in Tampa. If you get all that, sure, but that's a lot, right? You are not always going to have, not everything is going to be better than projected, right? There are going to be some guys in the Mariners that outperform their projections. There are, but there's going to be underperformances. You're going to have, a Logan Gilbert type miss a month for some reason. I'm not putting that out there. I'm just, saying you're going to have, maybe Mitch Garver bounces back, but Mitch Haniger's still atrocious. Maybe Cal struggles or something. Maybe JP Crawford doesn't bounce back and is kind of more what he was 22 than 24. Maybe Victor Robles isn't good. Maybe that was just a flash in the pan. So, and listen, every team has that. No team is guaranteed to win a World Series or make the playoffs. Everybody needs some breaks to go their way. You don't win a World Series, a Super Bowl, and NBA Finals without getting some breaks. But the Mariners need a lot more than some other teams. They are going to, and they've put themselves in that position. They're an 84, 85 win team that if, maybe they win a few more one-run games, yeah, they're 90 wins. But it's going to require a little overperformance, not, hey, we can sustain some underperformance and still be fine, unless they get something going this offseason. Do I have all the answers? No. I like Luis Arraez, but that's going to cost you almost your whole budget and prospects. I don't know if that's feasible. Arenado would be fun, but that's going to require a lot of moving parts for the Mariners to get in on that. And the free agents that are left are kind of underwhelming. Could they help? Sure. Anybody could. But I wouldn't bank on Jose Iglesias carrying you to a World Series or Yohan Moncada. Could happen. Wouldn't bank on it. That's all I got. Not much to talk about. Just thought I'd go over some of my thoughts on it. And the inactivity continues. Let's hope we get a move here. Just be fun to talk about somebody. And hopefully we see, and hopefully come spring training, we're feeling good about this baseball team. So I hope you guys guys and gals all have a great night, evening. Hope you all had a great holiday season. And yeah, that's all I've got. As always, remember to hit that like button, subscribe, comment, and no matter what, go Mariners. Peace.